Greetings, I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm going to build this plastic M18 Hellcat Tank Destroyer by Warlord Games. This model is in 1/56th scale, which is of course 28mm scale. The plastic in this kit is made by Italeri. You can see the Italeri logo on the box. This kit is also available in Italeri's own packaging. The back of the box has a few paragraphs of information about the Hellcat, some pictures of the finished and nicely painted models, and images of the decals, vehicle card, and flame and smoke markers. Inside the box we find this instruction booklet, which is a lot like the one found in the KV kit I built recently. It looks good and the instructions are clear and easy to follow. There's a painting guide in the back, which I think is a good inclusion. This time it does tell us that the colours they've used are indeed Vallejo paints. There's also this baggie of flame and smoke markers. It seems to be a standard inclusion in Warlord's plastic kits now. As are these vehicle cards. I rather like these. For forgetful people like myself, they're quite helpful. Though one commenter on my KV video did mention the print on these is quite small and hard to read, which is a bit unfortunate. I guess it would be hard to fit all of the information on the card with larger print though. It's not a problem for me though, and I do think these are a great addition and I wish I could buy them separately. And of course we get a sheet of decals with a variety of markings. These look pretty good. There are two in the upper right that say, "I don't want a," which I find funny out of context, and I don't know what the actual context is. Now for the important bits. There are two sprues in this box that come wrapped in some protective plastic. These are nicely moulded in grey with excellent detail, the same high standard that I've come to expect of Italeri and Warlord's plastic models. The hulls look pretty neat and there are plenty of other nice detail parts. There are two mantlet options here, and there's a crew, both a loader holding a shell and the commander doing commander things. These look pretty neat and I'm actually considering using them, though I'm not sure on that yet. The hull side and road wheel parts look quite good. They have some suspension detail too, which is a nice touch. The track detailing on this model is quite nice, and it looks like it will take paint very well. The only thing I don't like is that these 4-part track sets have a tendency to have gaps. They've been pretty good on other similar models so far though. And of course there's two turret halves. If you look at the machine gun above it, you can see that the handle isn't solid. There's actually an open space in the middle of it, which is really nice. Enough sprueing around, let's build this thing. I begin with the tracks just as the instructions suggest. I first glue on the idler wheel. There's a little nub that slots into the hole on the back of the wheel to ensure proper fitting here. Super easy. And now for the drive sprocket. This consists of two parts. Both of these parts are keyed so they go on correctly with the teeth facing in towards the road wheels. This is easy to put together. I give the parts a bit of a twist to make sure they're locked into each other. Then come the tracks themselves. I glue the top section on first. There isn't any keying like on the KV kit I built recently, but if you pay attention to the tread detail, you can see which way they should be facing. There are missing guide horns to clear the return rollers, and that does help with positioning, and I suppose it does kind of act as a keying. It's just not as good as the keying on the KV kit was. Not that it's especially hard to get this part on. Next, I glue on the rear and then front end sections of the track. These look to be identical, but I was still careful to glue the correct part to the correct end as outlined in the instructions. Then comes the lower section of track. This goes on easily enough. The only complaints I have are the small gaps at the ends, and the fact the road wheels don't quite sit directly on the tracks because the guide horns aren't quite cut away enough, but it's really a very minor complaint. It's only a tiny gap and the track sets do look pretty good. Some hull bits. I start by gluing together these two internal hull components thusly. The two boxes help to get the wall on at the correct angle. This is an open-topped vehicle, so this is a nice little detail. It can then be glued into the lower hull part. You can see there's some keying that locks this part into the correct position. I try sliding it back and forth to make sure it's not going anywhere, and it seems to be solidly in place. Looks decent enough. Next, the track sets can be glued on. These have guide slots similar to a lot of the other plastic Italeri kits. They're very effective, though do make sure to apply some pressure here to ensure the track part is up against the lower hull part as close as you can get it. You want to minimize the gaps there as much as possible. Then the hull top can be attached. There's a couple of guideposts and corresponding sockets at the front and rear of the hull that make positioning this extremely easy. I apply a little bit of pressure to ensure that there are no gaps, though the fit is very good, so doing so is not absolutely essential. Now to give the rear some attention. Butts. I first attach the lower rear hull plate. You can see the bottom of this part is beveled so that it sits flush with the bottom of the hull. It fits into the guide slots very easily, and we can then glue on the upper hull rear. This has some good guides on the back and it goes into place very easily, though I found I had to apply a little pressure to minimize the gaps there. Look at that ass! Now for some smaller details. First, I glue on my axe. It goes into the 2 forward mounting holes on the right side of the hull. These are good for when you need to axe a question. The hammer goes into place right behind it. You'll need that for when you've stopped for hammer time. Then comes this thing. I have no idea what it is. Perhaps it's some kind of air vent or something? Either way, it slots into the upper hull here, and this bar part should sit down over the side of the hull like so. If you know what it is, comment below. Next, there are a couple of shackles that should go onto the rear of the hull. These are super tiny, and because I'm a numpty, I dropped one on the floor, so it's gone forever. And I didn't bother adding the remaining one. I did, however, add the towing hook. This part is keyed so it goes on the correct way up, with the lever thing on top. You might find tweezers helpful for this, but I did manage to get it in place with my fingers. Now our Hellcat is ready to tow all kinds of things to the battle. Moving to the front, I add more tiny details. First, these shackly things that go on the front of the hull. These are a bit different looking than the ones for the rear. They were a little bit fiddly, but after some nudging with fingers and my knife, I got them to sit properly. Next, I add this thing. Another part I'm unable to identify. I think it might be a horn, or some kind of siren. The instructions aren't exactly clear on how this part should go in, but I think I got it right. I then glue in something that I can identify, the headlamps. No more guessing where you're going at night for you, Mr. Hellcat. These look quite good, but they are very tiny parts, so do be careful. They're keyed to help you position them facing forward. Then comes this thing, which I think is a patch or some kind of hatch. It goes here on the front left of the hull, and the keying makes positioning this super easy. The gun cleaning rods can then be glued onto the left side of the hull here. Nothing especially tricky about this. Right behind those comes this thing. I don't know what it is, a tool of some kind? Anyway, the instructions mention if you are using a specific marking when you paint your Hellcat, that this part should be left off until after painting, but I'm not especially worried about that. Now to install the hatches for the driver and assistant driver. There's a lip around the hole here for the hatch parts to sit on so they won't fall inwards. This is easy to do if you're using the correct parts for each side. I used my knife to gently nudge the hatches until I was happy with how they were sitting. These look pretty good, and they could be modelled open if that's the sort of thing you're into. And then come the protective bars for the horn, or whatever it is, and the headlamps. These aren't hard to attach at all. They are a little bit chunky looking though. I guess that's a trade-off for having parts that don't break as soon as you bump them. If you really wanted, you could bend some brass rod or something similar to make more realistic parts, but I didn't see the need for that. Not on a wargaming model anyway. I think the hull looks quite good. Now I can move on to the turret. I start with the gun breech. I glue it into this end part into which the gun will be glued later in the build. Then I assemble this. Well, I don't know what you might call this assembly. It looks like it has a small ammo rack on it. Whatever it is, it comprises 3 parts and they fit together easily enough. And then the assembly is glued into the right half of the turret. There's a slot there into which the assembly fits. Nothing especially complicated about this. I then glue what I imagine is the gunner's seat into the turret ring and basket part, and onto that I attach the right side of the turret. Not that it has to be the right side. You could put the left one on first if you want. I'm not here to tell you what to do. There's keying on the turret ring part, so you don't have to worry about trying to get the seats lined up properly with the rest of the turret. Next, glue on the other half of the turret, making sure to sandwich the gun breech part between the 2 halves. You should make sure this is the correct way up, or it will cause the gun mantlet to be installed upside down later on. I leave this unglued until I install the aforementioned gun. I apply pressure here to ensure a good bond between all the parts with as few gaps as possible. That was step N. There is no step O. Step P involves gluing this box thing into the right side of the turret. There's a raised post that it should be glued onto. Then the radio goes into the back of the turret thusly. There is a guidepost on the bottom of this part, but you can see it still has quite a bit of play to it. Next, I glue the roof onto the turret rear. There's keying on this to ensure a proper fit. Simple. Then, the commander needs something to make him feel special, so we give him this ring. It goes into place nice and easy, like so. I then glue the turret front and inner mantlet part to the front of the turret. There are two of these to choose from. I chose this one because I thought it looked cooler. I apply pressure to try and minimize gaps here, but there's still a bit of a gap along the bottom right of the mantlet. It's not too huge, but it is there. Next, I glue the outer mantlet part onto the end of the gun. It's keyed, so you can't put the parts together wrong. Well, you could put the mantlet on backwards, but you wouldn't do that, would you? No, you wouldn't. That assembly can then be glued into the gun breech part. There are 4 guns to choose from, 2 that are suited to each mantlet type. Be sure to choose the correct one. I've gone for the muzzle brake version, which is suitable for June 1944 and beyond. You can either leave this to elevate and depress, or add some glue to the gun breech pivot point to bond it into place as I have done. After that's done, I glue on the forward section of the turret roof. Like the rear part, there are guides on the back that ensure this locks right into place. Next, I install the 2 stowage rack things on either side of the turret. Somehow I thought doing this just out of shot was a good idea. At any rate, these are very easy to get into place. And then some stowage. These are some little bags, presumably belonging to the crew. The kit includes 4 of these, which I think is pretty good. I would have liked a bit more stowage, but this is a start at least. I hung all 4 of them in various places around the turret, but I waited until I'd got the hand railings on to position them all. Then come the spare track links. They go onto the rear of the turret here. There is keying, but it's not exactly a tight fit, so you'll have to nudge it around a little bit until it's straight. Next come the hand railings on the top of the turret. These are very fragile pieces, so be careful when removing them from the sprue and cleaning them up. They're not especially hard to position in their holes, though tweezers might be a useful tool here. I'm not exactly sure why these are such fine details when the headlamp protectors on the hull are thick and chunky. It's not a deal breaker for me personally, but it does seem a bit inconsistent. Continuing with the fine railings theme, I add these. I guess they're a kind of combination stowage basket and hand railing. They go into place easily enough, and I think they look quite good. Might add some bedrolls or something like that in here later. Then I glue on the antenna. Nothing much to say about this, it's simple enough. The final detail is this machine gun. I really like this part, mostly because the carrying handle on the barrel isn't a solid piece like you would expect to find on pretty much every plastic model. That's really cool. Also, instead of a mounting pin, it has a ball, so you have a lot more freedom in its positioning, which is nice. I glue the ammo box onto the gun's left side like so, and then glue the gun into the hole on the commander's ring. Position it facing whichever way your heart desires, and that's one rather good-looking M18 Hellcat turret completed. I am, as usual, not including the tank commander, but if you wanted to include the crew, I would recommend leaving them out until after they've been painted. And thus endeth the tale of the building of the Warlord plastic Hellcat. I think this is an excellent kit. Unfortunately, I don't have any other Hellcats with which to compare this model, but if and when I do get one, rest assured there will be a comparison. The instructions were clear and easy to follow, making this kit a pleasure to build. Everything fit together more or less perfectly, except for the tracks where there are some gaps and the front of the turret under the mantlet. The headlamp protectors could have been moulded a lot finer like the hand railings on the turret too. Beyond that, I have no other criticisms. The result is, in my opinion, a very nicely detailed representation of the M18 Hellcat. Unlike many other Warlord plastic kits, this one only really builds one vehicle. That's not really a criticism. There weren't really many variants on the Hellcat used during World War II, and this kit does exactly what it says on the box. But if you are really keen on some conversion work, you could use this as a starting point for an M39 armoured utility vehicle that the US used in the Korean War, or you could use the turret for a Chinese Type 64 if you can find the hull of an M42 Duster in this scale. I'm perfectly happy just using this as the Hellcat though. While I don't intend to paint this soon, I have other projects in the works first, I do think it will paint up really nicely, and it will make a fine addition to my kind of neglected American force for bolt action. It's about time they got some more vehicles. The British keep taking the tanks. So, what do you think of this kit? Have you built it yourself? Let me know in the comments section below. And of course, don't forget to do things like subscribing here on YouTube and following me on social media. Check the links in the description to find me. If you really like the things I do, please consider helping to support the channel over at Patreon. Patrons get to see my videos a bit early, along with some patron-only bonus content, and of course access to the patron-only Discord channel. I shall return soon, so until then, happy Hellcatting and thanks for watching. Farewell.